What's going on, guys? My name's Tom, and this video is going to be about dedicated servers versus peer-to-peer. I'm making this video for a couple of reasons. I want to talk about the dedicated servers that you guys are being forced to play on without knowing their location, and I want to talk to you guys about the feasibility of peer-to-peer hosting. So, Halo 5 and MCC both use Microsoft Azure servers. I pull IPs pretty much every time I play. I can see server IPs, player IPs, and I do it just because I have a general interest in networking. I pay attention to the location of people I connect to, and also how the server allocation process works. And before anyone makes any comments, Halo 5 does have IP masking, so you can't see the IPs of other players in a match-made game. But for MCC, while it does have dedicated servers and matchmaking, you can still see IPs of other players, even if you're connected to a dedicated server. So MCC and Halo 5 both use 4 main servers in the US. They are located in California, Illinois, Texas, and Virginia. Believe it or not, dedicated servers do exist outside of the US. There's a couple servers in Europe and Australia, and also servers in Asia and South America. But given the erratic nature of the server allocation process, if you live outside of North America, chances are you're going to be playing on an NA server. Now, I don't want to debate semantics, whether or not foreigners should be subjected to that. You hear a lot of people saying, well, this game was made in America. And while that may be true, foreign is a very relative term. So somebody who lives in France is foreign to me, but I'm also foreign to them. That being said, the main issue I have with dedicated servers is the location. If you live in or around a city with a dedicated server in it, chances are you're pretty happy. But the odds that you're going to draw that server every game probably isn't very high. So, for example, if I live in Virginia, which is for all intents and purposes on the East Coast, if I play on the Virginia server, I'm playing on probably 10 ping. And if I had fiber, probably about 1 to 5. What happens when I get a couple games on that and then I have to go all the way to California? You're gonna have a bad time. And as I mentioned earlier, the server allocation process is so fucked up that you could play during peak Eastern times and have 7 out of 8 people in your match-made game from the East Coast and still draw a California server. That's not fun, fair, or even logical in any sense. Now, what would make sense is, prior to the game, have the game analyze the host names and select the server where it's going to benefit the majority of people in the game. I've drew California servers where there's one kid from California and everybody else is East Coast. How the fuck does that make sense? And not to mention, sometimes the servers actually route your traffic to a different host. So, for example, if you live in Australia, you could pull IPs and it might say that you're connected to an Australian server, but really what it's doing is it's fucking routing your traffic to America, which only adds to your latency. Now, speaking in NA terms, what happens to people who live in Washington, North Dakota, or Montana, or New York, New Hampshire, Maine, Florida? The list goes on. The sad reality is, if you're from America and you live in the Northeast or the Southeast or Northwest, you're never going to play on a good host. For example, if you live in Washington, the best server you're going to get is California. And even then, you're playing on like 35, 45 ping. God forbid if you got to play on anything else, because really it's just unplayable. And as it pertains to MCC, when you factor in things like the broken aiming or the bad registration, you're pretty much fucked. You might as well not even play. Now, for the casual or more inexperienced player who doesn't really care about their KD or winning games, this stuff probably won't even apply to you. But given that Microsoft and 343 back esports, and esports are going to be quote-unquote fundamental in Halo Infinite, you would think they would be a little more transparent about the servers, or lack thereof, that they're forcing players to play on. Now, peer-to-peer is the better option for MCC. Unlike Halo 5, MCC was made for peer-to-peer. In MCC, unlike Halo 5, when you invite someone to your lobby, you're connecting directly to them. But Halo 5, for example, when you invite a friend, you're connecting directly to a server. Now, the reason I think peer-to-peer is better is because the people who live in obscure places like Washington or Maine, for example, they'd have a chance to play on a host that's better than 40 ping. The one caveat is there would need to be some type of host record. In Halo 3 and Halo Reach, there was something called a host record. Basically, the host record kept track of how good or bad your host was for other players. Your host record was console side. If your host was good for people, then you would get hosts more, and if it wasn't, then you wouldn't. Host records and host migration were implemented to prevent standbying. When MCC came out, there was no way to determine host. Anybody could pull host, and even if they had a bad connection or they standbyed, whatever it was, the host would never migrate. Given that MCC was made for peer-to-peer, IP masking will probably never happen. So why don't we just bring host records back, make sure host migration works, and give everybody, no matter where they live, the ability to play on a good host? Region lock is not the answer. I understand region lock in theory, but when you have like 1,000 people playing, why would you alienate the couple hundred outside of the US? Anyway, I wanted to make this video to create conversation and provide you guys with some type of transparency, because apparently the developers can't. That being said, comment down below, let me know what you guys think about this topic. I mean, really, if we're not going to get IP masking, then what the fuck's the point of dedicated servers? But as always, hope you enjoyed. Make sure you guys like, favorite, comment, subscribe. Love you guys. Peace.